So the question is, what does peace look like? If you Google it, you get a picture of a tranquil landscape and a rippling stream, or you get those kind of gentle waves that we had on the title package, or there's doves, or there's CND logos. But that's not what I mean. What does peace look like for you? What does it look like in your life right now? Maybe the waves are still too far off. There's a beach coming in the summer, but there's a long way to go before you get there. Or maybe peace is just getting the other side of the storm that is overwhelming you right now. Or maybe it's shedding those anxieties that are keeping you awake at night, tossing and turning. Or maybe it's just getting to that point on an evening when the kids are in bed, safely tucked up, and you can put your feet up and relax. Now hold that thought for a moment. What does peace look like for me? As we've said several times, this is the final week in our series, Faith, Anxiety, and Mental Health. Tim started off with the Old Testament prophet Elijah in a crisis come meltdown, thinking the whole world was against him. And so he runs away, and in the silence of a cave, discovers that God is not absent, but strangely and profoundly present. And then last week, Chris took us onto the Sea of Galilee in a storm where Jesus' closest friends were getting really anxious, fearing that they would drown while he slept. So they woke Jesus up and he stilled the storm. And Chris concluded, whenever we feel overwhelmed, whilst the anxiety might shout loud, Jesus is in my boat. Both of those talks are on the hub, on the Finchampstead.com website, and you can hear them if you've not heard them already. However, 3 weeks in, it could be easy to still be thinking, this is all well and good, but what can I actually do to make a difference in my life? For some of us, our circumstances haven't changed, and we can't control them, and we feel as though we have no more peace than we ever had before. Others of us are stuck in unhelpful patterns of life and thinking, and we don't know what to do. Maybe you want to do something about your mental health, but are overwhelmed by all the advice and the content that's out there. What to do? We've said it before, I'll say it again. We are not mental health professionals. And there are times, as Stephen said, that's exactly what we need. It is not failure to seek help from our GP or from a trained counselor. Now, sometimes it's just the interplay of how we are wired and the stuff that life throws at us that leaves us in a dark place. That's not moral weakness. That's just being human. You know, for me, there was a particularly difficult time. I didn't know what to do. A friend recommended a counselor. I went. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I could never have imagined going to a counselor. But I ended up knowing more about myself, more about understanding the circumstances I was involved with and the dynamics that were at play that enabled me to walk back in to the situation rather than walk away from it and find a way forward that set us up for the years that followed. So this morning, if we need professional help, seek it out. It may be the most life-transforming thing that you can do right now. But back to today. What does peace look like for you right now? So let's just pause and ponder a simple question. What if God really does care about the whole of our life and our experience, our sleep, our body, our relationships, our learning, our work? You know, not just those deeply spiritual moments that we have on a Sunday when we're here at FBC. No, I believe that God does care about the whole of our life. And I believe that the whole of life is central to the message of Jesus. And I believe that there are practical things that he would have us do so that we can live our best life. And along the way this morning, we're going to be looking at how the principles that Jesus taught are echoed in contemporary insights as to how we can best look after ourselves. And in fact, we're going to see 5 things that can form the basis of good habits that we can develop, good lifestyles that we can grow, for which there is both a practical dimension and a spiritual dimension. We can focus on the practical, we can focus on the spiritual, we can focus on both. We will live in the good of it if we do. Peace, then. Remember Christmas? Loads of angels singing, "Peace on earth." And then in the stories about Jesus, he would regularly say to people, "Peace be with you," or "Go in peace." The night before he died, knowing what's coming with his closest friends, he says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you." Now, I could go on and on and on, but it's enough to recognize that peace is a major theme in the Bible. It comes more than 600 times, but specifically it's central to Jesus. Understanding peace is very important. And practicing peace then becomes front and center for Jesus. And it has practical outcomes in what he teaches for the way those who follow him are to live day by day. Things that will help us if we're followers of Jesus. And these age-old principles of living well will improve anybody's well-being, whether we have faith or none. But before we go any further, we need to get our heads around 2 different words. Because when Jesus uses them, they don't necessarily mean what we could take them to mean in everyday English. Now, indulge me, this is really important. The word peace itself. Now, in English, peace can mean anything from the absence of war to the silence of peace and quiet, or just coming to terms with things. Yeah, I'm at peace with it all now. But in formal Hebrew writing, the word is a word that you might be familiar with. Shalom. In the everyday language that Jesus spoke, Aramaic, it's the word shlama. But of course, the New Testament wasn't written in Hebrew or Aramaic. The New Testament that tells us about Jesus was written in 1st century Greek, and that word is the word irene. But all 3 carry a similar sense. And rather than being the absence of conflict or a quiet stillness or a freedom from troubles and anxieties, shalom, shlama, irene, peace is about harmony and wholeness and well-being and completeness and flourishing. So when Jesus says to his friends, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you," he's saying something really quite profound and much deeper and richer than a mere English sense of calmness and an absence of conflict. And this shlama, this shalom, this peace, is the very heart of the very purpose of Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace. And it is about harmony and wholeness and well-being and completeness and flourishing. And when Jesus explains himself and tries to put into words what he is all about, he says, I have come that you might have life and have it in all its fullness, this flourishing. That's the first word then, peace, far deeper than we might realize. But then there's the word blessed. Now, I only discovered this last month, reading a piece by a New Testament scholar, and I have to say it got me really excited. The word here is the word Makarios. The scholar's a guy called Joel Green, and he says this: Makarios belongs to the domain of thriving and flourishing. To translate the term as blessed isn't exactly wrong, but it is consistently too small. Jesus' first word in the Sermon on the Mount is a declaration concerning those who are flourishing. In English, blessed is too small because it's a passive word. It's something that is done to us. It's something that is conferred upon us. If God has blessed us, he has given us something. Now that's as good as far as it goes, but it misses that richness, that depth that the word carries in the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic, which is about what it means to thrive, what it means to flourish. And in the New Testament, this thriving and flourishing is what happens in our relationship with God. Peace and living the blessed life, then, is deeply connected to what Jesus teaches about the abundant life, about life in all its fullness, and what he wants for us. For Jesus, this is central to what he's all about, and it is at the core of his teaching. So, I want to take us to the Sermon on the Mount, one of the most famous speaking events in the life of Jesus. It takes place on a hillside rising out of the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. And experts and the historical record for the last 1,600 years have identified a kind of natural bowl or amphitheater just over a mile from the shore of the lake that is almost certainly where Jesus taught. And this picture is amazing. It's in fact just less than 4 miles from the place that Jesus used as his base in Capernaum. Jesus begins what he's to say with a series of statements about the blessed life. The kind of life that thrives and flourishes in relationship with God. And I want to briefly run through these because they illustrate the component parts of a life that thrives and flourishes, the blessed life, the peaceful life, the life of shalom and shlama. Now, let me warn you right now, you're not going to hold these all in your mind. And that's okay. Because what we're doing is looking at a picture that emerges out of these blessed statements that Jesus makes as to the kind of life that thrives and the component parts of it. So if you lose track for a while, just know that I'm a true prophet and I've already said that you're going to. And that's okay. So, this abundant life, this fullness of life that Jesus talked about. In Matthew's account of the Sermon on the Mount, it begins like this. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Notice this, blessed are. This is not a future prediction, it is a present observation. Blessed are. It's a reality now. It's a description of the present. But blessed are the poor in spirit? Why would you think that these are the people who are particularly blessed? Why is it that people who are poor in spirit are the ones who are thriving and flourishing? Well, the poor in spirit are those of us who recognize that we haven't got it all together. Those of us who understand that we need help. Those of us who are growing in our self-awareness enough to know something of our own weaknesses, our own shortcomings, our own failings, and our need to do something about it. Those of us who are poor in spirit know that we need help. So as Stephen has already pointed out to us, the significant thing is the people around us. Those who can help us, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors. But also that need, because of our self-awareness of where we come short, our need to keep growing in our knowledge, in our behavior, in our habits, and knowing that we grow minute by minute. And just because we got it right today doesn't mean we go and get it wrong tomorrow, and we have to learn the same lesson all over again. And of course, in the middle of all this is that recognition that we need God's help us, foundational. But you know, there's an age-old adage that you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. Well, being poor in spirit is the starting point. It's the humility to recognize our need, and that's the beginning. Oh, and one of the fascinating things to me as I've been working on today's talk is how this age-old wisdom that is embodied in what Jesus teaches in the Sermon on the Mount, how this corresponds with the insights of those working to support people's mental health and sense of well-being. The parallels are striking, particularly to a report from the New Economics Foundation called The 5 Ways of Well-Being. Their first principle is connect. Connect with the people around you. Think of them as the cornerstones of your life and invest time developing relationships. And keep learning. Try something new. Fix a bike. Learn to play an instrument. Start to cook. Learning new things can make you more confident as well as being fun. There is more to life. And those of us who are poor in spirit are blessed because we recognize that and we thrive and flourish. And Jesus goes on, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. This is most often used at funerals, but that's not primarily what it's about. Neither is it about those people who are miserable and pessimistic and cynical, the naysayers who are full of doom and gloom, the killjoy approach to life. No, those who mourn are the people who are alive to the fact that not everything is right with the world. These are people who feel things sharply. And I think Jesus has in mind people who are alive and aware of what's going on around them. People who are emotionally intelligent and sensitive enough to observe where people are at and what they're going through and what's happening in their community and what the issues are. People who are aware enough to be observant enough to notice. And in seeing things through God's eyes, mourn for how they are and long for them to be different. Here, the key quality is people who are keenly observant, seeing what's going on around about them. The well-being report says, take notice, be curious, catch sight of things, be aware of the world around you and how you're feeling. It's also, again, about this connection with people around us, being alive to their needs and what's going on with them, because people matter. And those who mourn are those who will thrive and flourish. But Jesus goes on, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Now, meek is not a word we use much these days. Whatever you think it means, meekness is not weakness. though it does carry a sense of gentleness and kindness and mildness. In fact, Jesus said these are exactly the kind of qualities that he sought to embody himself. He says, "Take my yoke upon you, learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart." And this exemplifies what meekness is like and what it's all about. Someone who is meek does not make it all about themselves. They're not someone who comes in and dominates a room. You know, one writer talks about meekness as strength under control. It's about how we treat other people with respect and care. And it's an active word. It's seeking the best for other people, enabling them to thrive and flourish. Now, to be fair, which one of us doesn't enjoy being treated gently and kindly and with respect? We want the people around us to thrive. We're actively doing stuff, working for the good of others. We're generous and give of ourselves to others. Our well-being report says of being active, go for a walk or a run, step outside, do something, join a community group. I think Jesus is saying be active in something that's actually more profitable, something more with the purpose. It says give. Do something nice for a friend or a stranger or a volunteer. Those who are meek are blessed. They thrive and they flourish. But Jesus isn't finished yet. He says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Now, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. But to start with, hungering and thirsting are powerful and intense descriptors. Jesus doesn't say, "Blessed are those who are slightly peckish and just fancy a drink." It's rather more urgent than that. And then, hunger and thirst for righteousness. That is for things to be as they're supposed to be. You know, if mourning is seeing how things are, that they're out of kilter and longing for them to be put right, hungering and thirsting for righteousness is the imperative to do something about it. Righteousness is aligning ourselves with what is right, with how God sees things. It's seeking to understand and apply the characteristics of what we know about God, truth and justice and compassion and mercy and grace, all animated and enlightened and overflowing with God's sublime love. A passion then to keep on growing in our understanding of what is right. Actively working for the good, actively with a purpose, looking to bring about what is right and bring it into being. And those who hunger and thirst for righteousness are blessed. They thrive and they flourish. Now, I said you wouldn't hold all of them, and you may have lost one or two already. That's fine. You get the picture when we get to the end and it all comes together. But again, Jesus says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy." Having mercy on someone is not treating them as they deserve. It means being forgiven, being kind towards weakness, being patient towards someone who's slow, about giving a second chance and a third chance, about being generous and going beyond what we need to do or are required to do. It is very much going the extra mile. Rather than believing the worst in someone, it's believing the best in them that the facts will allow. And not giving up. It's about grace. And those of us who are merciful engage with the people around us to help them to thrive through our merciful behavior. And we're generous and give of ourselves in the process. And the merciful are blessed because they thrive and flourish. We're almost there. Blessed are the pure in heart, says Jesus, for they will see God. In the Bible, our heart is more than just our emotions. It's our will, our intent, our essence, the center and core of who we are. Purity of heart is about who we are on the inside matching who we are on the outside. It's about integrity and reliability, being whole and of one piece. So no hypocrisy, no deceit, no dishonesty, no double-mindedness, no impure intentions, no envy, no hatred, no bitterness, no moral corruption. What you see is what you get. There is no conflict with ourselves, pretending to be what we're not, because we're all of a piece. The pure in heart are known to be trustworthy and dependable, good to work alongside, good to be friends with, because you always know where you are with them. The pure in heart take notice of themselves, they're self-aware, are only too aware of their own poverty of spirit and brokenness, but have sought to pull their lives together and make them whole. Trusted and welcomed by the people around them. Keenly observant of themselves and the way that they can continue to grow. The pure in heart are blessed. They thrive. They flourish. The final one, Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. In one sense, this is the easiest of the lot. If peace and shalom and shlama and irene are about harmony and wholeness and well-being and completeness and flourishing, then peacemaking is about working to that end in our families, in our workplaces, in our leisure pursuits, wherever our lives place us, to be peacemakers. People who help our communities and the people we're in contact with to thrive and flourish. And they will be called children of God. Why? Because that's what their Father in heaven is doing. Above all, that's what he wants of us, for our lives to flourish and thrive. Yeah, I started this morning asking the question, what does peace look like? It's about harmony, wholeness, well-being, completeness, flourishing. For Jesus, this is what it means to be blessed. And these are the things that enable us to live a thriving, flourishing life as people in relationship with God. But insights that we see are actually translatable into our lives, whether we have faith or not, with the well-being report. And the brilliant thing is that there are small steps and habits and routines that we can give attention to this week that will increase the quality of our flourishing and thriving, our peacefulness. It's about connecting with the people around us. Plan to connect with somebody intentionally this week. Who might that be? Or join that FBC group that you've been intending to but haven't got round to it. Keep learning and growing. What is it that you have wanted to learn to do, to understand better? Years ago, I wanted to learn the saxophone. It was great. I got to play in the church worship band once. I don't play anymore. But I love the saxophone and appreciate it so much more. In recent years, I started to cook. My wife, Marion, wouldn't believe that I would ever start to cook. But kormas and sweet and sours and cottage pie, I love it to bits. And I just started to read a book written by somebody I profoundly disagree with. And you know what? I'm learning stuff that I hadn't even thought was possible to know. It's about taking notice and being aware of ourselves and what goes on around about us. Intentionally each day, take time to step back. Drink in the relationships you have, the conversations you have. I love sitting in our garden. And we've got a blackbird that's adopted us. And he has the most gorgeous song. But it's being aware enough to take notice. Sometimes I find it helpful in prayer at the end of the day, just to run through the day and the people and the situations I've been in, and to take notice as a prompt for my prayer. Be active. But not just doing stuff, be actors to a greater purpose, for a benefit of others, work for doing good. Whether it's park run, walking with a friend, joining a local volunteer group. Give of yourself. Be generous, from encouraging the person on the checkout at Tesco's to intentionally thinking the best of people. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. If the band could come up. Just think about what you might give attention to this week that will increase your sense of well-being, that will help you thrive a bit more in your circumstances, that will help you flourish. If we follow this path that Jesus points to, he says we are blessed and we will thrive and we will flourish. Listen to his words. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven, for they will be comforted, for they will inherit the earth, for they will be filled, for they will be shown mercy, for they will see God, for they will be called children of God. The poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, they are blessed, says Jesus. They are thriving. They are flourishing. They are blessed. They are thriving. They are flourishing. And we can be too. We can be blessed. We can thrive. We can flourish. That's what peace looks like. You see it? Let's pray. Father, out of these words of Jesus that we've spent time pondering together this morning, I pray that by your Holy Spirit, you would take those words of Jesus and sink them deep into our hearts, our souls, our spirit. But with those shafts of light that enable us to see how they can make a difference in the life we live right now and can help us thrive and flourish as the people you've created us to be all that you want us to be. For Father, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.